Calibre, what were you thinking? Hello again, YouTube, and welcome to a bit of an update on the Calibre BBB. Now, many of you might recognise this as a bottom bracket, and indeed it is the bottom bracket that until yesterday evening was fitted to my BBB. If you've watched any of my other videos, you've probably seen that I've had trouble with this in the past. In fact, I'd only had the bike a couple of months when it started playing up. Sounded like it was self-destructing. Long story short, took it out, thought I'd greased it, thought I'd solved the problem, but clearly I hadn't, because I took the bike out. Let's see if we can just focus on it for what it's worth. I took the bike out Tuesday, and so 2 days ago, and it was back to its, well, its evil worst again. I mean, it sounded absolutely awful. So anyway, last night I stripped the bike down, and two things struck me immediately. Firstly, when I took the bottom bracket out, there was almost a, well, probably about half a cup of water came out of the bottom bracket area. So God only knows how long that's been in there, because we haven't had any wet weather and I haven't really cleaned the bike properly for months. So yeah, so anyway, that was obviously contributing to the state of the bearings. But the other thing that struck me was the quality, not, of this particular bottom bearing when I took it out. Now, when I took this apart, I wasn't wearing my glasses, and I just took a quick look at the label and thought, oh yeah, it's a Shimano, so that'll be easy enough to get a replacement for. I was wrong. This is made by a company called Samox. Okay, so it's clear that Calibre are cutting corners here, because I can't imagine that this cost more than a couple of quid per unit. Now, when you think, you compare that with the price of putting a proper SRAM or even a Shimano bottom bracket in there, I mean, surely a bike manufacturer has the buying power to buy those things cheaply. Whereas, I'm not being funny, Calibre, I don't know what deal you did on these, but it just strikes me that probably somebody did a deal for a box of 2,000 of these or something for about £8.50. So anyway, the bearings are absolutely shot in this one. Let me see, I'm going to bring this up close to my microphone. That's the good side. Oop, that's the bad side. Really, really shot. So anyway, I've already ordered a Shimano Ultegra bottom bracket to go in here, because they're the same size. I mean, basically, the threads are the same size, the diameter's the same size, and the width is the same size. So for your BBB, this is a 68 to 70, and I think this is actually in the 68 configuration, because this has got a 2mm spacer on there. But in any case, I've ordered a new one of these. But I did think to myself, I wonder if you can do a refurb job on this, because these are easy enough to take apart. They're a plastic tube with two alloy shells, and each of the alloy shells has a spacer, a cover, for all the good it does. Let's just get an implement to take that out. I need a tougher implement to take that out. Oh, there's a little screwdriver. Okay, so you've got this cover, seal thing that goes on them. Let's take that out. And can you see that inside, he says, offering this up and just touch on it to focus, you've got a sealed cartridge bearing. Now, the sealed cartridge bearing isn't held in by any circlips or anything. It's just held in by an interference fit with the alloy cap. So what I'm going to try this evening is, I know what size that bearing is. If you're doing this yourself, it is a 6805 RS, and you can get 10 of those in a packet off of Amazon for 10 quid. So what I thought is, I'm going to try removing this bearing and if I can, refurbish the bottom bracket, because even though I've got a new one on order, yeah, it'd probably just be good to have one of these in stock for when it goes wrong again, because I have the feeling it will go wrong. Now, how do you get that bearing out of there? I've tried drifting it, but there's not really anything that you can get onto at the back to drift it out. But what I'm thinking is that that is an alloy housing, and you've got a lot more steel in the bearing than you have in the housing. So what I'm going to do is get that housing really hot with a blowtorch and see if we can't get that bearing out. So let's give that a go now. Okay, let's try not to burn the bike shed down. And uncharacteristically, going to think safety first and put some gloves on. Now, before anyone starts going crazy saying that I'm going to change the material properties of the aluminium by doing this, possibly, I don't think so. I think you have to get aluminium up to quite a few hundred degrees C before it changes its properties, and I don't think I'm going to get it anywhere near that. I just really want to get some heat into it and see if we can just grow the bearing cup enough to release its grip on the bearing. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on a piece of wood, because I want to keep the heat in the bearing and not transfer it to the vise that it's sitting on. So let me just get an off cut. Put this in a vise. Hold it firmly. Right. Let's just light the blowtorch. And again, if you haven't got a propane torch or anything like that, don't sweat it. You could use like a hot air gun or something. I don't think you could use a hairdryer, but anyway, let's get this going. I'm just looking inside because there is a little bit of clearance. The bearing is slightly pushed into the housing already. So you should be able to see when the bearing drops, if you can see inside. There you go, the bearing has just dropped. So I'm going to keep the heat on it, Oops, get ready with my pliers. Heat it again just to make sure. Pick this up. There you go. So, bearing's out. So as you can see, all you have to do is just get enough heat into that cup and the bearing will drop out on its own. Like I say, I did try drifting the first one. I don't think it really needed it. So let's let all this cool down and then I'll clean the cups up. And part 2 of the video will be installing the bearings back in the cups. Okay, so I've just cleaned up the bearing shells, and as you can see, they literally are just an alloy shell. They are, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Can I? No. There we go. There we go, that's better. Okay, catch it in the light. Make sure it's in focus. Right, okay, they are just literally a machined shell that you drop a bearing into using an interference fit. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to nip upstairs to my PC, hop onto Amazon and order a bag of these bearings, which I understand should be with me tomorrow. And then I'm going to be refitting the bearings to these caps. Now, the way that I get them back in is going to be essentially very similar to the way that I took them out, using temperature difference. So when the bag of bearings turn up, they're going to spend 24 hours in the freezer, get them absolutely freezing cold, and then come back out to the shed here, heat the cup up, and you know, you don't want it to be scorching hot. You want it to be hot because you're making the bearing quite cold. So, you know, it should go in quite easily. And then I think drop a cold bearing into a hot cup. Sounds like a recipe for an evening drink, doesn't it? Anyway, drop a cold bearing into a hot cup, and I think that should go in quite easily. If it does need a little bit of persuasion, I'll probably just use the vise just to push it home and seat it. But given that I'm going to get a bag of 10 of these bearings for a tenner, that potentially gives me 5 bottom bracket swaps for a tenner. Now that ain't bad value, is it? So there it is, how to get the bearings, the shot bearings, out of your old bearing cups on an external Holotech 2 type bottom bracket. Now I've done this on this, forget what it's called, Samrock's thing that was in the Boss Nut, but that's a standard kind of bearing design, bearing bottom bracket design that you'd find on a lot of Shimano bottom brackets. Yeah, basically on road and on mountain bikes. And usually I think with the Shimano ones, you'll find that they usually stamp on the outside, not serviceable or something like that. They don't on this one, funnily enough, because they probably expect that it's going to fail after about 2 weeks. So yeah, going to do this in 2 parts, primarily, like I say, because I've literally only just ordered the new part from Amazon, so that's on its way to me as we speak. So that's the first part, how to get the bearings out of those cups, and to be honest with you, that's, without oversimplifying this, half the battle won, because, you know, once you've got the bearings out there and you've got a nice clean fresh bearing cup to put a new bearing in, getting a new bearing in is fairly easy. In fact, I'd say getting a bearing back in there is a lot easier than getting a bearing out. Anyway, I hope this is useful to you. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I don't just do mountain bike stuff, I do road bike stuff, and I haven't forgot that I am a triathlete, allegedly. So I've started running again, and I'm going to be swimming again soon. So I really intend to do some stuff on that. But before that, I've got a big feature coming up on one of my road bikes, my old Domani 4.5, my old carbon road bike, my first ever carbon road bike. Absolutely loved it. So I'm going to be doing lots of things to that, and there's going to be some overlap between what I do on that and what's relevant to a mountain biker. So for example, one of the things I'm going to do to the bike is a full detail, and to do that I've bought myself a Works Hydro Shot, one of those 12-volt pressure washer things. Now if you've got a mountain bike, I think that's entirely relevant to you, so keep peeled for that one, because a lot of the things that I do on the road bike and do on the road bike frame are going to be entirely relevant to things that you might want to do to your mountain bike to keep it in good order, or just to get the crap off it before you put it in the car. Anyway, thanks for watching. Part 2 of this coming up as soon as the bearings arrive, so you can expect that in a couple of days. Thanks again, YouTube.